You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV. You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV. You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV.
Draft once more is coming to your county. Stand up and be counted. No greater victory was ever achieved than by greater sacrifices.
Doctors all around. Let our fallen heroes and heroines guide and shield our men and women. Let their ultimate sacrifice be the reason we change the game and give our enemies what they have been giving us. AMBAZONIA needs to protect its people from the terrorist troops of La République du Cameroon. The time is now to do just that.
We are enough, so let's draft, and draft. Our existence as a people depend on that.
It's time for Manyu County.
Executive Director at Global Think Tank Africa, Joachim Marie, Mossing London. Dr. Asaf Akibe Baby,
Horizon, the voice of the Amber woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV.
Mutumbo, mama yo, na ya boy go get down. Blue Jay promise. Mama you kind, mama you're beautiful, mama you good, mama you're wonderful. No woman like you, mama. No woman like you, mama. Thank God for you, mama. Thank God for you, mama. You gave me life, oh mama. Queen of my life, oh mama. I go love you for life, oh mama. 'Cause you love me so, oh mama. From small begin, I never forget all the suffer when you suffer for me. Oh yeah, yeah. All the pain and the troubles where I put you through. I remember when money no be there. day for her. You be the try your best. You go run around to find us something where we go chop. When I dey sick, you know the sleep. You go the cry all night. You go hold me tight, start to pray, say God make you help my oh Lord. Ooh, I wo ye choma. Afunga na bere ye funga choma. Ambama na bere ye ambama choma. Enga na chinu ye ga choma. Mama, I wo ye choma. Afunga na bere ye funga choma. Ambama na bere ye ambama choma. Enga na chinu ye ga choma. Ye ga choma, mama. Enga na chinu ye ga choma. Chinu ye ga choma. You gave me life, Mama, queen of my life. Mama, I will love you for life. Mama, 'cause you love me so. Mama, you're my motivation. You gave me the best education, Mama. The song where I sing, I'm for you. Now it's special dedication to you. Oh yeah. I know say every night and day you pray say make a Mama. The God where you the pray, I'm for heaven. Don't give me this inspiration, Mama. The song where I sing, I'm for you. Now to show my appreciation to you. Be a warrior, choma. A funga na bere ya funga choma. I'm bombing na bere ya bomba choma. Ngana chinum ya ga choma. Mama warrior, choma. A funga na bere ya funga choma. I'm bombing na bere ya bomba choma. Ngana chinum ya ga choma. Chinum ya ga choma. Chinum ya ga choma. Chinum ya ga choma. You gave me life. Mama, queen of my life. Queen of my life. I will love you for life. I will love you, Mama, 'cause you love me so. Mama, you gave Mama, Mama, queen of my life. Mama, I will love you for life. Mama, 'cause you love me so. Oh, Mama, Mama, selelele. Ale Mama, selelele. Ale Mama, selelele.
Good morning and greetings to you wherever you are. Welcome to The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman. This is Dr. Patience, your host for today's program, and I'm excited to be with you today. Today we have our one and only Barrister Tim Beseha, who has a wealth of knowledge on the topic for today. Today we'll be talking about the federal constitution, something that I think every Ambazonia has to know about. In fact, about a month ago, we started a program about the history of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, some facts every Ambazonia needs to know. And on that program, the very first program, we had Professor Bridget Tebo and Dr. Winnie Lubadi, and they went through a wealth of information. But today, we want to focus on the federal constitution that was in place in 1961. The constitution that was put on mainly by La République du Cameroon when they decided to annex our land, when they decided to recolonize us. So before I get into the program any further, I want to welcome Barrister to the program. Good morning, Barrister, and welcome to The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman.
Thank you, Madam, for having me. I think The Horizon is such a program, very, very educative, that many young Ambazonians we like to listen to, we like to follow, because there's always something to learn. And there's no shame in learning what you did not know. There is no shame in correcting what you made an error in doing. And I think the Horizon is up to that task. Thank you once more for having me.
Thank you, Barrister. And you said something crucially important, that many young people should continue learning, because, this our plight, our problem, that we're trying to get ourselves internationally recognized. Most of those who were born in the 60s, in the 70s, and maybe the 80s and before understand what our land used to look like. They understand what the former British Cameroon, what West Cameroon used to look like. So they know exactly what they are missing. The young ones do not. That's why education is crucial. So without further ado, I'm going to delve into what we have to talk to today. I know you have a wealth of information, so I think the best way to probably address this is to probably read some excerpts of the Constitution and then have you talk about it. But before I do that, there's something that I came across that I should have shared with you, but I just fell upon it last night. I didn't really read it in detail till now. I looked at it and said, oh my goodness, this is something that is important. So you may be seeing this for the first time or hearing of this for the first time, but it was written in May 1961 from the Colonial Office in London. Maybe you've seen it, but I just want to read a brief, maybe 1 or 2 pages of it, and then we'll proceed. It says, confidential, federal government. A federation is an association of states which has been formed for certain common purpose, but in which the member states retain a large measure of independence. The federation, which exists at the present time, differ in the distribution of powers as between the federal government and the state government, but they all have in common that there is an exclusivity federal field, an exclusively state field, and a field in which both may operate. In regard to this last field, it has to be determined whether the federal government or the state government shall prevail in the event of a clash between the two, and it is usually provided that it shall be the federal government which prevails. On the division of powers, it has been said that the federal government is expected, in quote, to be exercised principally on external objects such as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, with which last the power of taxation will, pardon me, I just missed a line here. Let me read this again. On the division of powers, it has been said that the federal government is expected to be exercised principally on external objects such as war, peace and negotiation, and foreign commerce, with which last the power of taxation will for the most part be connected. The powers reserved to the state will extend to all the subjects which in the ordinary course of affairs concerns the lives, liberties, and properties of the state. The fields of responsibility are usually defined in the Constitution, which commonly set out in lists the subjects which falls to the central government and to the regional governments. The Constitution has to make clear how subjects not included in the list, and in quote, the residual subjects, are dealt with. Within the fields allotted to them, respectively, the federal and state governments are usually quite independent of one another. Indeed, this is authoritatively regarded as the characteristics of federal government. Neither Central nor regional government acting alone can alter the scope of the power of the other as laid down in the Constitution. Number 2, a written constitution is almost indispensable in a federation, if only because the respective spheres of operation of the central and the regional governments have to be clearly defined. The Constitution has to be the supreme law of the country, and it has to set out the means by which it may be amended. Number 3, it is not uncommon in provisions relating to the amendment of constitutions for certain sections to be entrenched, and these sections can be amended only by processes more difficult than those by which other sections may be amended. A note on the amendment of federal constitution is annexed. Number 4, the principal existing examples of federations are the United States of America, Australia, Canada, Nigeria, and Switzerland. India is a federation in some respects, and so is South Africa. But in South Africa, the provincial councils of the states are subordinate to the union government and can be overridden by it even on regional subjects. Number 5, in Australia, as in Canada, the states and the central government have separately elected parliaments. In Nigeria, also, the lower houses at the center and in the regions are separately elected by the regional parliaments, have a hand in the choice of the federal senators. Switzerland reflects these features too, in that the cantons sends representatives to the federal upper house. And number 6, in the United States, the powers not given to the federal government or not prohibited by the Constitution to the states are reserved to the states or the people. So it goes on, but I'm going to end. Number 7. Let me read number 7. In Nigeria, similarly, the powers not reserved to or exercised by the federal government are the responsibility of the regions. I'll end here for now, Barrister. In light of what I've just read, before I go into that constitution that was amended to represent both La République and the former British Southern Commons, anything to what I just read? That I just read, I'm sorry?
I think the author or those who wrote that document were very much federalists in the real sense of it. They understood what they were writing. And imagine that was a British Parliament document. And they mentioned Nigeria. That document, you said, was written in 1951. And
1961. May 1961.
1961. Okay. And then they mentioned Nigeria. Let me take it back. Not just to May 1961. Let me take us back to 1951. In 1951, there was already a federation in Nigeria. There were regions in Nigeria. And as of 1951, remember, 13 December was the day that we were handed over to Great Britain as a trust territory. 13 December 1946. 5 years into that, we joined that type of federation in Nigeria. In 1951, we had the first elected members of British Southern Cameroons to go to the Eastern House of Assembly, which was part of the Federation of Nigeria. And so we had our first elections in 1951. By 1951, just 5 years after 1946, British Southern Cameroon already had political parties. They already had a sense of organizations. They already had a sense of what a federation looked like. The 1951 elections were conducted under the KNC, Cameroon National Congress, headed by Ndele. And so we elected people to go to Enugu as part of the Federation of Nigeria. And so we were very much aware of that. Our brothers in the East never had any political party in their lives. Their first elections, whatever the small and core elections, were held in 1956, 5 years after Southern Cameroon. The first political party, the UC, was registered in 1958, almost 8 years after the KNC was registered in Southern Cameroon. And so how were they doing their own elections? They have not changed. In 1956, they simply nominated people from the East, people from the Hausa, and created what they call the regional assemblies. And so that is a proper definition of a federation as seen by the federalists. Those countries mentioned there in there, none of them is French. India was English. Australia speaks English. United States speaks English, and so on and so forth. So the French, probably that we got to be swallowed up by them, never ever knew, and probably don't even understand what a federation is, or is supposed to be. I will come to the Constitution, which we are going to analyze today. But before I get to the Constitution, let me just try to take ourselves back and correct a few errors. See, as I said, we always have to learn from something. As a trust territory, we evolved because we're a trust territory of the United Nations. We evolved under the Charter of the United Nations. We were supposed to evolve under it to independence. And I tell you this part of the story so that we correct some of the errors that we're making. We dot the I's that we fail to dot. We put the commas where they are supposed to be put. See, we've had this narration of our people. They claim that the Secretary General, Dahamaja, who died, we're just coming to give us independence in 1961. Well, unfortunately, that's not true. Because the United Nations under which we operated had a charter. As a trust territory, we operated as under the UN Trust Territory Trusteeship Council, which is in Part 8 of the charter. So all our cases went through that one. And fast forward, the UN Charter has a chapter for the security, for the General Assembly Secretary General, for the Secretary General of the United Nations. It defines what it should be, what should be done. It is there with in Chapter 15, the Secretariat. And the Secretary General of the United Nations is just the chief of the Secretariat. He could not give you independence or refuse you independence. He organizes the Secretariat of the United Nations and its different agencies, including the Trusteeship Council. So the Hamajad could not single-handedly or any form give us independence. That is not possible. And to mark this, we would not forget that because we're making this mistake. All the evolution of Southern Cameroon independence, which started in 1953 with the withdrawal of our parliamentarians from Unugu. They started under the leadership, under the Secretary General of the Hamajad. He succeeded to the office in 1953, I think March. Our people started their march. They withdrew from the Unugu Parliament in April, when he was already Secretary General of the United Nations in 1953. So he was also the Secretary General to the Trusteeship Council. So nothing went on that I did not know. All the resolutions that were passed concerning our journey to independence, starting in 1959, Resolution 1352, which imposed a plebiscite on us. The Hamajad was there. The Secretary General, he didn't order it. Resolution 13, 14, 15, 41, which talked of conditions for granting independence. That is 1960. That every country should have its own independence. Came under Dak Hamajad. He was Secretary General. He didn't alter it. Resolution 1608, that came in April 1961. That Hamoja was the Secretary General. He didn't alter it. And so when did he die? This man died on the 18th of September 1961. 2 weeks, 12 days to 1st October, they were supposed to have independence. So this theory that, well, you have something that you go back to Washington and write a resolution giving us independence, it's just not true. We don't know whether he could have said why he would have written a report, but he never wrote one. He died. So we should stop doing that. We have enough. He probably loved us so much, but he never had the opportunity. He had the opportunity, if he could, to alter. He could not alter the resolutions of the United Nations. All what we are quoting are resolutions. The United Nations speaks by way of resolutions, not an individual. Yeah, he probably loved something, but the member countries that sat there and were doing nothing did not like his ideas. So we just dismiss this idea of Dahamaja being able to give us independence, because everything passed under his guardianship. He didn't do it. And so let us go now to the real topic that I want us to discuss about, the federation. I wonder if this is okay, or we still have something to say. Madam, do you have something to add before I go to the federation?
The piece of cloth made in Ambazonia, a land brimming with history, courage, and the indomitable spirit of its people, a profound reflection of Ambazonia's collective identity and our unyielding struggle for freedom.
A full representation of who we are, what we are, the history, story, and the struggle. It's a piece of cloth you should have in your closet. It is woven into a rich tapestry of cultural heritage, traditions, and long-standing desire for self-determination. Proudly adorned with unique patterns and symbolizes unity in the Ambazonian people.
The cloth's patterns and colors mirror the courage and hope that fueled their aspirations for a brighter future. Each thread represented a story of bravery, sacrifice, and the unwavering commitment to justice.
The piece of cloth made in Ambazonia became more than just a garment. It transformed into a symbol of a call for recognition, worn proudly by Ambazonians and their allies worldwide. It carried a message: we exist and we deserve to be heard. As long as the cloth adorns chests and shoulders, the spirit of Ambazonia lives on, and the hope for a free and united land remains alive. The piece of cloth made in Ambazonia, a land brimming with history, courage, and the indomitable spirit of its people, a profound reflection of Ambazonia's collective identity and our unyielding struggle for freedom.
A full representation of who we are, what we are, the history, story, and the struggle. It's a piece of cloth you should have in your closet. It is woven into a rich tapestry of cultural heritage, traditions, and long-standing desire for self-determination. Proudly adorned with unique patterns and symbolizes unity in the Ambazonian people.
The cloth's patterns and colors mirror the courage and hope that fueled their aspirations for a brighter future. Each thread represented a story of bravery, sacrifice, and the unwavering commitment to justice.
The piece of cloth made in Ambazonia became more than just a garment. It transformed into a symbol of a call for recognition, worn proudly by Ambazonians and their allies worldwide. It carried a message: we exist and we deserve to be heard. As long as the cloth adorns chests and shoulders, the spirit of Ambazonia lives on, and the hope.
Fellow Ambazonians, fellow children of God, I am Fon Fangum Gojidinka. I had no intention to speak out at this time, but I decided to do so in response to phone and emails calling on me to speak out as the father of Ambazonia. I want to first of all say I am not the father of Ambazonia. The father of Ambazonia is the Lord God, who thousands of years ago created the Ambas Bay. Geography identifies the zone of Ambas Bay as Ambazonia. I am only the little creature which the Lord God used to put the name Ambazonia into writing through the pamphlets I wrote in 1985 on the Ambazonian revolt. It is the Lord God himself who kick-started the Ambazonian revolt by making President Biya enact Restoration Law 84/01 on the 2nd of January 1984, which dissolved the illegal union of our two countries and restored them back as mutually sovereign and independent of each other again, as they were before the illegal union, which was first called Federal Republic and later called United Republic of Cameroon. President Biya only realized it when I called on him to withdraw from Ambazonia in compliance with his restoration law. This is proof positive that the restoration of Ambazonian independence is the act of God to put an end to Cameroon occupation of Ambazonia. President Biya arrested me and I was tortured till I suffered a stroke which paralyzed my left side. He then charged me before the Cameroon Military Tribunal with high treason, an offense which is punishable with death by a firing squad. The Lord God made the tribunal dismiss the case, but President Biya rearrested me and put me under indefinite house arrest. From there, I made my escape into exile in 1988. In 1990, I went to the United Nations with our case. And after studying, they advised, 1, that a proclamation be made formalizing the restoration of our country's independence with its geographical identity as Ambazonia. 2, that a formal request be made for a seat at the United Nations, including a request for the UN to put Cameroon out of Ambazonia. This we did. However, the UN said Ambazonia's seat at the UN would be available only when Ambazonia's elected representatives stop attending Cameroon Parliament. Meanwhile, in 1992, we got President Biya to acknowledge Ambazonia as an independent nation through the Bamenda High Court case HCB 2892. The proceedings appear verbatim in the Cameroon newspaper Le Messager, English edition of 10 February 1993. With that newspaper, I approached Nigeria's head of state, General Sani Abacha, to use his good offices to get President Biya withdraw from Ambazonia in compliance with Cameroon Law 84/01 and Cameroon High Court Judgment HCB 2892. When President Biya rejected Nigeria's good offices, General Abacha sent Nigerian troops to occupy Ambazonia's oil-rich Bakassi Peninsula. General Abacha offered to withdraw from the peninsula when President Biya withdraws from Ambazonia's mainland. Cameroon sued Nigeria at the International Court of Justice, and the court ordered both Cameroon and Nigeria to withdraw to their boundaries as obtained at independence. Then in January 2005, the United Nations got both Nigeria and Cameroon to sign a treaty to comply with the judgment of the International Court of Justice. And Cameroon President Biya signed it, saying, and I quote, "I, President Paul Biya of the Republic of Cameroon, in a bid to provide lasting peace to the Bakassi conflict, do hereby commit myself and my government to respect the territorial boundaries of my country as obtained at its independence." Unquote. And Cameroon independence was on the 1st January 1960, when Ambazonia was still part of the Nigerian Federation. In 2009, the Lord God made the United Nations surveyors go and build huge pillars along the international boundary line which separates Cameroon from Ambazonia. So when President Biya says Cameroon is one and indivisible, we say yes, but Ambazonia is not part of Cameroon. A case in point is that when Ahidjo resigned, Paul Biya was illegally made head of state so as to prevent the National Assembly President S.T. Muna becoming interim head of state till a new president is elected within 90 days. The reason is that S.T. Muna was an Ambazonian, and Ambazonians are not Cameroonians. So President Biya has been an illegal president from day one to this day, and he knows it. Let me reaffirm that with effect from 2nd January 1984, Ambazonia's independence became a fact and no longer a matter for debate. And Ambazonia would take its seat at the United Nations once our elected representatives resign from Cameroon Parliament. We therefore salute and hail our Honorable MP, Wilbur, for leading the way in standing tall to be counted in support of our people's demand, which is summarized in these 12 words: Cameroon public servants, go home. Ambazonian senators and MPs, come back home. We are therefore thankful to our lawyers, the teachers, and the masses who have made this strike a national one, enabling us to have the civil society consortium as our home front leadership. We call on the consortium to stand firm with the strike till illegal President Biya withdraws from Ambazonia, until our members resign from Cameroon Parliament, so that Ambazonia can take its seat at the United Nations. This will provide legal cover for the foreign assistance which we need to reconstruct our governing organs in accordance with Ambazonia's constitution. And that is our 1960 constitution, which has been modified to replace the Queen of England with a native Ambazonian as Ambazonia's head of state. In this connection, we issued one ordinance creating Ambazonian Civil Defense Force to absorb our boys from Cameroon security forces, and another ordinance
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that video. Fellow viewers, fellow worship listeners, sorry for the brief interruption. We had to show this video, and then we'll go back to the constitution that we were discussing. And before the brief interlude, the barrister gave a wealth of information of what was happening in Nigeria and what was happening with the former British Southern Cameroonians before La République came into the picture. But before we go back to discuss the constitution, we want to talk briefly about this audio, about this video, because we are pressed for time. The barrister, you've heard what Pa Gojidika has spoken about. It's a very, very informative video. I'd like you to briefly tell the Ambazonian people, tell the viewers your impression about this video and the take-home message that is supposed to be well solidified.
Well, first, we have to say thank you to Honorable Fangoji Dinka for all his contributions in this struggle, academic and otherwise. His sacrifices, going to jail, that is all part of the struggle. We hate him for all that. But you see, I'm one of the people, I don't take information like that. Most of the information must be verifiable. We share it today in 2023. Most of what we say, if it is written, must be found in some written document. So I just believe that unless I didn't read everything, which I stand to be corrected, some of what the fund says are not factually verifiable, not legally verifiable. Well, let me just go to what you call the Green Tree Agreement and the RCJ court case that was determined in 2002. The RCJ court case is 200 pages long. I've read it from sentence to sentence. I did not find any place in that judgment that Paul Biya or regime was ordered to withdraw to their borders at independence. It doesn't say like that. If somebody has that judgment that says so, I would gladly want to read it. Secondly, the Green Tree Agreement that was entered in 2006 is a 6-page document. The one I have, maybe there's some other ones that I don't know. The one I've read is 6 pages. There is no place in that document saying that Nigeria and Cameroon should withdraw to their places of independence, to their borders as of independence in 1961 or 1960. There's nothing like that there. The Green Tree Agreement simply states, in summary, that is meant to enforce the decision of the ICJ, not to alter it. That's stated right in the top there. And what was the decision? The decision was that, in summary, Bakassi is Cameroon. They didn't say West Cameroon, simply say Bakassi is Cameroon. Therefore, Bakassi is not Nigeria. Nigeria had laid claim to Bakassi on the belief that the people live there. The government said, yes, your people live there, but that does not make Bakassi Nigeria. The Nigerian had argued that the Yaoundé government was not taking care of their people. The Green Tree Agreement simply laid down conditions under which the Yaoundé government would provide for the Nigerians living in Bakassi. It didn't go to define the boundaries, to call it Southern Cameroon. Yes, after the Bakassi, the pillars have been planted. I have pictures of the pillars here. But most of the pillars are not in Bakassi, which is in Southern Cameroon. The pillars were planted from Yola, Lake Chad, because there was no international boundary there, because what they call Northern Cameroon was not part of Nigeria. But Northern Cameroon had become part of Nigeria by virtue of the 1961 plebiscite. So the pillars have been planted to show the international boundary between Nigeria, including now Northern Cameroon, they wanted to join them, and the La République de Cameroon. So that's why I say we need to verify some of the facts. That's as far as I see, as far as I've read. If somebody has a contrary document, I would gladly want to read it. I would gladly want to learn from it. Then the honorable lawyer says that in 1992, he brought SCB 28 in the Bamenda High Court, which ordered Yaoundé to withdraw from Cameroon. Yeah, there was an action in Bamenda Court in 1992. I was in Boya. And then that court practically we don't have the judgment. It was what they call in law an originating summons. In 1992, 93, 94, we tried to cross-check in the Bamenda High Court registry for that judgment. It is not there. What the lawyer says, which is correct, is that they publish something in the Messager. But court judgments are not only published in the Messagers. You have a copy of the judgment that you take to the court. You cannot go enforce the judgment with a newspaper. You enforce the judgment signed by the judge as the judgment itself. It will be signed by the judge, it will be signed by the registrar. We didn't find that judgment. But even if the judgment existed, is it possible for a domestic court, Bamenda, Boya, where the magistrate is appointed by President Paul Biya, to order Yaoundé to leave Kumba or to leave Bamenda? It's legally not possible. You cannot get that type of judgment from a court which is superior to the judicial commander will say, well, these people are not under you. It is almost impossible, in my opinion. It is no longer, it is not almost impossible for you to get that type of judgment in a Cameroon court, because the magistrate is appointed by the president. The prosecutor is appointed by the president. The registrar is appointed by the president. So it looks not feasible. But that's not the issue. The issue is that our case remains genuine, even without those facets that he's talking about. We still have a solid case. We still have a solid case, which will take us to the constitution that we have talked about.
Yes.
This is where our case is. And to get to the constitution, let us get back to 1961. In fact, 1959, 1961, when they imposed a plebiscite on us. Yaoundé was not voting in the plebiscite. In other words, East Cameroon. Nigeria, that was supposed to join them if we wished. Or Yaoundé, or Republic, that was supposed to join them if we voted to. None of them voted in the plebiscite. But as far as Yaoundé or East Cameroon is concerned, they made Foncha and all the parties concerned understand that they were going to go into a federation of two equal states. That was the understanding. And that is why Ahidjo say with his two legs went to the United Nations and declared, we shall not seek to absorb the minority with our majority population. He said this. And so we voted with the understanding that we were going to have a federal constitution. Do we have a federal constitution when we voted? No, there was no federal constitution at the time we were voting, which is where it is well stated in Resolution 1608-5. Yes, the intention was to go into a federation. We'll put it down in writing now. Resolution 1608-5. For you to put that in writing, Southern Cameroon did not have foreign affairs. We were still under the British administration. The British government, again, the British government, the Republic, the Cameroon government, and the Foncha government. These are three governments, not three individuals. Shall sit and agree on how to implement their agreed intentions. What were the agreed intentions? To go into a federation. But this had to be formalized. We did this tripartite UK administration, with a Southern Cameroon government, and the Republic government. They had to agree on how to implement it. Did they ever agree on how to implement their proposed, their intended federation? You can only find that in the present document you're giving me called the Federal Constitution. Does that Federal Constitution reflect what the people agreed on? What they intended to do, never agreed? It did not. Why? Because from this very Federal Constitution, you're not going to see where the agreement of 1608-5 between Great Britain administrators, Southern Cameroon government, and the Republic government ever start to agree. They were not there. They didn't agree. Had they met in this tripartite avenue, maybe that document you wrote to us about a federation from the British people, they would have fought to put it in place, to have a federation in that manner. But because they were absent, they were never there, they didn't know what took place, they never had the opportunity to do that. And therefore, there was no federation. You have mentioned in that document countries known to have federations. None of them includes a French-speaking country. There's no one there which is a federation. The other one that has something French there is Canada. But it worked because the Canadians were colonized by the British. They were by large the majority. And so Quebec, which is a small, tiny province in Canada, is French. So the idea of federation as propounded by the British was sold to the Canadians, who are English speaking, who have formed a federation there that works. That has continued to work till today. So now back to what you call the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Cameroon. A federation is not in the appellation, no. For example, United States is not called the Federal State of Nigeria, United States, or United States.
Yeah.
India, the mention there is not called the Federation of India. They're just India.
Right.
Australia, federal government of Australia, and so on and so forth. A federation is not in a name. A federation is in the content of the governing document. The governing document is the Constitution. So, to our 1959-61 Constitution, signed on the 30th of September 1961. Yes, it is titled the Federal Constitution of Nigeria, the Federal Republic of Cameroon Constitution.
Cameroon.
Yes, the Federal Republic of Cameroon Constitution. This is a copy of our here. That's how it is titled. But there's nothing federal in the Constitution that they were selling out there. There's absolutely no federation. Because as per that document which you just read, a federation has to define the powers of the federated states and the federal government. Let's be clear. What your state is going to do, the federated state is going to do, or the federated entity, different from the federal government. This constitution does not define anything inside for the federated states. Absolutely nothing. And you already knew that. For example, in part 2, Article 5, it deals with the federal jurisdiction. What would the federal government do? It's so long.
Yeah.
They will do everything in the world.
Barrister, before you get to that, I'm sorry. Before you get to that, because I was going to get to that, let me just start with Article number 1, which is just the basic, the beginning. So in Article number 1, it says the Federal Republic of Cameroon shall be constituted as from 1st of October 1961 from the territory of the Republic of Cameroon, henceforth called East Cameroon, and the territory of the Southern Cameroons, formerly under United Kingdom trusteeship, henceforth called West Cameroon. The Federal Republic of Cameroon is democratic, secular, and social. It recognizes the equality before the law of all its citizens. It affirms its attachment to the fundamental freedoms contained in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Charter of the United Nations. So basically, all they did was they took their own constitution of their own country before and just amended it and put the change date and put that it begins October 1st, 1961, because this document had no input from our people. Correct me if I'm wrong. It had no input from Honorable Foncha and Endele and Joa. Those were our forefathers that were instrumental in building the former British Southern Cameroons.
Yes.
And then because of time, I will go back to another part that is very interesting, and then you will talk about the Article number 5 that you were about to talk about. The Article number 5, why not? Let's see. It says that there were some few amendments. There was amendments to Article number 10, Article number 5, Article number 44, Article number 54, and Article number 59. So let's go to Article number 5, because I like to hear what you were going to say, which addresses the competence of the federal authorities. And you mentioned that it's a very long list of things. Go ahead, Barrister. I cut you short when you were about to talk about that.
Yes, but before I talk about that, let us go to where you started. Article 1 is an introduction. The Federal Republic of Cameroon shall comprise the former state of West Cameroon under British administration and East Cameroon. That is perfectly right, and that says to the narrative till today. But any other thing said after that is a lie. They shall abide by this human right. They don't do it. They shall respect the Charter of the United Nations. They don't do it. So the introductory paragraph is meant to serve to today. Is meant to serve the one and indivisible Cameroon that they purportedly built on 1st of October 1961. That serves them, good for them. That's okay. But then come forward to what you have just asked. Article 5 and 6, which is subdivided into A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, is so elaborate. But what does it deal with? It deals with federal authority. And if you look at that, you see that it takes every aspect of life in the so-called Federal Republic of Cameroon and hands that authority to the federal government. Everything that you can imagine is handed over to the federal government. I don't need to belabor the point that we never took part. I've said that the 16085, which entitled us to go there as a government and give our own input, was never taken into consideration. It never met. And in this is that remember that this is 1960, 61. How much French did Mr. Foncha know how to read? How much did Ahijo know how to speak English? And so in a meeting of that magnitude, between two different people speaking different languages, the common factor that you expect to find, the indicators, you have an interpreter and the translators officially constituted, who will tell Ahijo, the cowboy from the north, well, this is what these people are saying, probably in pidgin. Who will tell the Foncha, Indele, no, who speak French. This is what these guys from Yaoundé are saying in French. But I've not seen any secretariat where these important documents were produced with translators and interpreters. It just defeats the idea of an international conference. They didn't exist, so they never took part. But just looking at Article 5 and 6, it's not going to be enough. Yeah, they enumerated all those things there. That's the federal jurisdiction. You must look for what they left for the federated states. What were the federated states to exercise as their own authority? That's what is important. They can leave the whole thing here from washing clothes to eating jama jama for the federal government. That's good for them. What did they leave for the federated state? Because we don't have a lot of time. It's not just saying, I say we are dealing with documents. If you look at that federal constitution, go to Article 38. Article 38 titled, that's chapter 9. Article 38 is not a federated states. So what are the federated states to do? That's consecrated in chapter 9. Article 38. What is left for the federated states? Nothing. And this is what right there. Any subject not listed in Article 5 and 6, any subject not listed in Article 5 and 6, and which regulation is not specifically entrusted to the Constitution to the federal government, shall be of the exclusive jurisdiction of the federated states. Anything they have forgotten, anything they don't forget, we do not talk. Yeah, don't talk somebody chop hero. They don't talk water fufu. If they don't forget water fufu, either water fufu cannot be interpreted somewhere to mean the authority of the federal government. They will come to come now. So what did they leave? What was the authority of the federated states? As per Article 38 of the federal constitution, there was nothing there for the federated states. And so how can you have a federation without federated state authority? But so, that's not even all. Ask your question.
Yeah, so they also mentioned that on that particular Article 38, what the document I have, the last line says, the House of Chiefs of the Southern Cameroons is maintained. But before we even continue with that, there's something that is important. We're going to go back and forth. Article 4 says, federal authority lies within A, the President of the Federal Republic, and B, the Federal National Assembly. The President of the Federal Republic and B, the Federal National Assembly. Okay. There's something that I want you to bring to for you to discuss, because let's talk about composition. it says that in Article 16, and the reason I'm connecting this together, because it says where the authority lies on Article 4, the President of the Federal Republic and the Federal National Constitution. But in Chapter 4, under Article 16, it says the Federal Assembly, whose terms of office shall be for 5 years, is composed by members affected by universal, direct, and secret suffrage in each of their federated states in the proportion of 1 member per 80,000 inhabitants. 1 member per 80,000 inhabitants. And at the end somewhere of the constitution, it has East Cameroon as having 3,002,000 people, and West Cameroon has having 8,000 inhabitants.
800,000.
Right?
800,000.
Yes, 800,000, pardon. So based on this, if you want to see how much power they have, if you divide that 3.2 million by 80,000, that gives you what? The ratio. The point I'm trying to make is that the ratio of how many of them in that Federal National Assembly of Eastern Cameroon descent versus West Cameroon is so large that the West Cameroon will have no voice. In essence, we have no voice because they are majority in the Federal National Assembly. And it says the power, federal authority lies with 1, the President of the Federal Republic, and number 2, the Federal National Assembly. Please talk to us about this particular fact.
This is what is happening. We all knew from day one that if we were to join these people, we were to join them as a minority. That's a fact. We're 800,000, 1 million, they were twice our population. And so we're supposed to join them, if we did, as a minority. There must be minority protection. For example, you and me live in the United States. There are states that send only 1 congressman to Congress. There are states, the way you live, California, they send the whole country to the same Senate, to the same Congress of 365 members. Wyoming, they'll probably have 1 or 2 there. But there's a control under the Federation of the United States. Whereas California is so large, with so many congressmen, they send only 2 senators to the Senate.
Absolutely.
Whereas Wyoming is so small, they also send 2 senators to the Senate. So that's a balance because the Senate represents the states. The Senate represents the states, while the Congress represents the population. And so we knew they were joining them under as minority rule. But even there, which I didn't want even to go there, they pretended to provide for a minority despite the overwhelming majority. They wrote down that provided, because in summary, Anglophones, West Cameroon was to provide 10 parliamentarians into the Federal House. The Federal House was 50 members. Southern Cameroon will produce 10. East Cameroon will produce 40. But how were they going to counter this overall majority? They wrote it down. That provided, that's something important. If you have to go through the Federal House, the majority of Anglophones, that is 6 of the 10 must approve. If the majority did not approve, it will fail. So that was supposed to be there. Okay. But if we dwell so much on this, we miss the important point.
Right, go ahead.
Because even they didn't even respect it. Because if Ahijo had, in 1972, taken his referendum bill to the Federal House, 6 Anglophones would have voted against it and would not have passed. So he simply ignored it. But let us deal again with what the states had. I'm dealing with the British document. What did the states, in particular the state of West Cameroon, preserve in this so-called federation? They had nothing reserved for them. I've mentioned Article 38, which says that look for anything you can do and do. But you know, in there, you mentioned about which Cameroon House of Assembly being reserved. That was irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing was the West Cameroon National Assembly, the West Cameroon government. Was the West Cameroon government reserved somewhere in that federal constitution? No. West Cameroon government was simply killed. Why?
Yeah.
Look at the articles in the federal constitution. I refer to article. Let's go to. Okay, Article 5 and 6. It says somewhere, I'm sorry, I'm missing it.
I can read 5 and 6 if you like me to.
It is a little bit further than 5 and 6.
Yeah, I can read something. Maybe this is what you're referring to in Article 6. Let me just read this. Maybe then it says, this is in Article number 6 towards the end. In respect of the competencies enumerated in this article, the governments of the federated states may continue to legislate and to direct the corresponding administrative services until such time as the Federal Assembly or President of the Federal Republic have decided, each in his own sphere, to exercise the power entrusted to them. I see that as a setup.
Yeah, that is a setup. But what I'm referring to,
while you're looking, I'll just read on, and then when you get to what you want, I will stop, or let me know. Okay, so
okay.
Article 6. Let me start for Article 6. The following shall also be vested in the federal authorities. Article 5, first of all, the following shall come within the competence of the federal authorities, which the barrister already explained. Nationality, the condition of alien, rules governing legal disputes, national defense, foreign affairs, internal and external security of the federal state, immigration and immigration, economic planning, monetary system, higher education and scientific research, information and broadcasting.
Okay, no, that's not where I'm heading to. This is what I was looking for. In Article 38, see dealing with the federated states, because Article 38 is with Chapter 9. Article 39, I read.
Yes.
39. The Prime Minister of each federated state shall be nominated by the President of the Federal Republic of and invested by the government of the federated state. Now, and by simple majority of the so the President of the Federal Republic, in short, in simple language, appoints the prime ministers who are heads of the state. That's Article 38, Article 39.
39.
39.1 and 39.2 states further. Secretaries of state shall be appointed by the government of the government of the President of the Federal Republic. So the President of the Federal Republic appoints the prime ministers, appoints secretaries of states, and dismisses them at will.
Exactly.
So where in the Federation do you have, for example, President Biden appointing the governor of Iowa and dismissing state secretaries? So where's the Federation there? So that is in writing. And that is what has brought us to this point of what dealing with Southern Cameroon. In exercise of that, Article 39 in exercise of that function. Ahijo came to dismiss Joa and put Mona his own
Exactly.
choice.
Right.
And so there was no federation as a fact. There was no federation in law. It was a sham legally put up, because it's a legal document. It's in writing, it's not me inventing it. So could anybody in the world tell me any federation, be the ones mentioned inside there by the British document, where the Queen of England or the Prime Minister of England goes to dismiss the Prime Minister of Scotland or Ireland and appoints their own state, because you must remember that the UK is a federation. The United Kingdom is a federation. Can someone tell me where the government in Ottawa goes down to dismiss the Prime Minister of Quebec and their secretaries, and so on and so forth? And so, again, legally, without any niceties talked about, this is what they call a federation. In paper, not even in paper, it did not exist in paper, other than the name. It did not exist. There was no federation in law. There was no federation in practice. Go on.
Yes. Okay. So, the president of the Federal Republic had too much power in this constitution. The section that I read briefly, I still want us to talk about it, which is part of Article 6. And my version may be slightly different from your version, because this version that I have is
just read the version. Read the article.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So the Article 6, where it talks about the following shall also be vested in the federal authorities, and it lists it. The last part of it says, and this is what I wanted us to talk about, the one I said is set up. In respect of the competencies enumerated in this article, which says all the things that had to do with safeguarding the political freedoms, the status of persons and property, the statutes concerning obligations and contracts in civil and commercial affairs, the judicature, including rules of procedures and competence of all courts, penal law, federal transport, prisons administration, legislature on public land, labor legislation, medical services, secondary and technical education, the administrative organization, weights and measures. Okay. In respect of the competencies enumerated in the articles, the governments of the federated states may continue to legislate and to direct the corresponding administrative services until such time as the Federal Assembly or President of the Federal Republic have decided, each in his own sphere, to exercise the power entrusted to them. So I am saying that they are basically saying that these people can do anything, but anytime that the president or the National Assembly wants to do something otherwise, they can do so.
No,
is that right, Barrister? Okay,
no,
please.
I don't know what they're saying. After assuming all those powers,
yes,
in theory, as of 1st October 1961,
right,
they knew that they didn't have the effective powers. They were not in control. For example, let me just take an example. They said they were dealing with primary school education, but we have schools in Boya. They didn't have anything to do with the schools. But that's even more complicated. They talked about prisons. What prisons in Boya? In Boya, what the prison in Upper Farm, one in Lower Farms, all in Boya. What the prison in Bamanda and so on. There were prisoners there. These were not federal prisoners. So they knew they didn't have the competence. So they said, okay, why will we set our own prison things Go on running the prison as you want. On the short time that we set our own prison, they will take over from you. They knew that they had taken over control in theory of the whole government, but they didn't have the infrastructure in place. So say, okay, go on doing this thing. Then they were ready with their own structures. You just go away. They were not trying to help us. No. I've given the examples, for example, I've illustrated by the prison system. What a very powerful prison system in Boya. It was not a federal prison. They didn't even have one like that. When finally they decided to take the prison, they decided to adopt the West Cameroon prison system and make it now a federal prison system. They made a law, oh, it has become our own. And our prison system was based on what they call the productive prison. You went to prison, you worked. You were officially paid. Part of that money was left for you. When you graduated from your prison term, they gave you the money to go and start a life. What the productive prison in Boya, there are two prisons in Boya. The upper farms was a productive prison. They reared cows, they reared chicken, they did all that. Sold milk, I bought milk from there. I made money. That the Boya Central Prison, which is still there, which kept carpenters, kept bricklayers. You could go there and hire labor. So they took all this and then they purported to adopt under now the federal government what they call the Boya Productive Prison System. And that the largest prison training school in Boya. But what happened, they didn't even do what they wanted to do. They came to Boya, which was a symbol of the productive prison, sent their brothers to Upper Farm, who killed all the cows, sold all the chicken for money.
Wow.
I bought some of the meat, they sold there, they killed the cow, sold it and quit it. What the productive prison in Bavenga, it is still there. Bavenga is inside Bafia and Moyoka there. What were they doing there? Work was on the farm. If you were from Bamenda or Womb, a prisoner, and you were physically, they send you to Bavenga, transfer to Bavenga. There are big farms there. They grew crops where they used in feeding other prisoners, but they were not feeding them free. The prison from Boya will go and buy the plantains. The prison from Kame, wherever, they will buy the food. And then they would eventually pay the prison people who were working there a symbolic salary, which was given to them the day they finished their term. For them to go and start the pay and transport to your house or wherever you came from. And so that article you have referred to was only a temporary measure to allow them to set up their administrative federal government that would take control of what we had. They were not trying to help us in any way.
Yeah, that's why I said it was a setup. I said it was a setup. They were setting us up. Yeah, exactly.
In summary, I've said this all the time. Any measure they took from 1961 till today was meant only to foster one agenda: assimilation of Anglophones. Whatever measure they did, even till today, was directed to assimilation. Yes, for example, they go to bury Nifundi, give him all the ground there, but the idea is to assimilate him. They carry him in national colors. Nifundi was never a planton in any office. He was never a government official.
Absolutely.
He never took a penny officially as a government civil servant. So why all this ground there? Or the presidential bodyguard coming to carry his corpse to assimilate him as one of them. That's their whole goal. They can spend all the millions there. Their goal is to assimilate this guy, to make this guy look like a great Cameroonian. They're not there because they're sorry for him, no.
Okay.
They're not paying for his wife's they are not paying for his wife's funeral because they love him.
All right, let's move on because we're going to be ending the show soon. I noticed something. This is part 2. And unfortunately, we're doing this in kind of a hurry because the president is going to be coming up soon. Yeah. I will still ask you to come on the show with another document that I'm going to send to you for us to talk about. I noticed something in one of the documents that the previous constitution that they had, where it says the Federal Republic, it says the Federal Republic of Cameroon is indivisible secular. There was a document that they had, they used the word indivisible instead of democratic. So that was their own term before they absolved us. They had the word indivisible in that document because they were having their own problems with I guess the Bamileke, but that's a topic for another day. Let me go to concerning the President of the Federal Republic, Chapter 3. You've already said that the federal government had no powers. Look at the powers of the President. Article number 8. The President of the Republic, of the Federal Republic of Cameroon, head of state and head of the federal government, shall be the guardian of the federal constitution, shall uphold the unity of the federation, and shall be responsible for the conduct of the federal republic's affairs. He shall be assisted by, in his function, by vice president of the federal republic. Article number 9. The president of the republic, of the federal republic, and the vice president shall not be nationals of the same federated state. They shall be elected on a single list of universal, direct, and secret suffrage. Candidates for the office of the president and the vice president of the federal republic shall be fully in possession of that civic and political rights. They shall have completed their 35th year of age by the date of the election. Conditions of nomination and candidates, the control of elections, and the proclamation of results shall be determined by federal law. The office of president and vice president of the republic shall be incompatible with any other functions. Let's talk about this briefly. First of all, he's saying that they shall be elected. And you rightfully already made the point that Biya, who took after Ahijo, was never elected. So even their own constitution, that is basically what they preferred and not what our forefathers would have liked on this paper, was never respected. Barrister, please go ahead, talk to us.
Now, you must look at anything the Francophones, we're reading in English, but this document was produced in French. Anything these people in Yaoundé produce in terms of elections is a fraud, it's a manipulation. It's not elections in the way you and me understand it.
Okay.
Because, for example, East Cameroon they had independence on the 1st of January 1960. But when they had independence on the 1st of January 1960, they had no elections. One, there was no election to elect Paul Ahijo. One, they had no constitution. So how did he become president? So their own notion of elections is very, very different. Ahijo was just co-opted from the 1959 agreements in Brazzaville. Say, okay, you'll be the best man to vote for us. We'll make you the president. We'll not even give you a constitution. When you get there, we'll draw a constitution. We'll send French experts to come and draw a constitution for you. And that is what they did. So when you see this rambling calling election, it's a lie. They are meant to deceive Anglophones. And let me end up that particular aspect with this. The first elections in Cameroon, Federal Republic of Cameroon, took place in 1964. That's the first time they elected somebody. But it was a list system imposed by Yaoundé. Because until then, they had, and they have always had only one party. That one party throughout their lifetime. So you co-opt your people. In fact, you put them there. They call them nomination, but it is not an election. So their first election was 1964. Otherwise, they have never had any election. And what happened? After the election, we still had about 4 political parties in West Cameroon. They all had only one. The only party that they had registered there officially was the UC of Ahijo. That was registered in 1958. The UPC that they tried to form and call it a party was in 1955. It was never registered. So they simply banned it. But going forward, what do they really mean? People who talk about elections should encourage plurality of candidates.
Absolutely.
That's what elections mean. So you can have a freedom of choice. But that has never worked in their mind. Their own idea has been to manipulate and own it. And let me end this with this point. When they came and joined, when we purportedly joined them, who had in West Cameroon the CUC, the KNC, the KNDP, Well, about 4 political parties. When I usually realized that these political parties were really doing freedom of expression, he called them and said, look, let us form one political party. And they agreed, they strictly agreed. They agreed, okay, we shall merge and form one political party. And what is important is he convened the people to come and form this one political party. All these parties, 4 of them in the West Cameroon, 1 in East Cameroon, had to bring in candidates who would sit down and form a new political party they call the CNU. How many delegates were supposed to form the CNU? There was a total of 30 delegates who were going to merge to come and sit down and form the major party called the CNU. Guess what happened? Ahijo asked Frontier, his party, to bring 2 members. Ndele 2. In all the 8 parties in West Cameroon produced 8 people to constitute the team of 30 people who will form the CNU.
Wow.
There was only one party in the East Cameroon, then they had 22 of Mr. Pobiya's UC, Union Cameroonese. Frontier with his KNDP, Ndele with his KNC, Mr. Muna with CUC, and Billy and the rest. All of them combined as political parties produced only 8 to sit down and form a single political party that will henceforth run the activities of the country, political activities in the country. Can you call this democracy?
Not at all. Not at all.
What influence did they have in the formation of the CNU? 0. So their own idea from day one, hidden in the agenda, manipulated and inducted into them by France, was every single step to absorb the Anglophones. Absorb them. Make sure that in fact, in the 1960s, there was something in Boya there, which they called the French Cultural Center. The French Cultural Center was just there to spy for you to learn French. It was near the next to where they appeared at the so-called Unification Monument. That was the place. It's still there. So the whole idea, if you ever think about elections, written anywhere under this constitution or somewhere else, it was meant to be a fraud.
Okay.
With the goal of absorbing and reforms. Back to the topic again. There was no federation in practice. There was no federation at law. There was no federation at all. In short, it was a fraud. It was a manipulation of the Anglophones in particular and the international community at large, who purported to oversee this measure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barrister. We will be ending the program now. I know that we'll be having another episode where we'll go through some more details to show how things really existed within our own people before they came here. There are some conferences that took place in August of there was one in June of 1961 and then August of 1961 that I'd like you to hear what our people were talking about, conversations that took place during the meetings, for people to understand that before they got to this federal constitution that we just briefly went through, the plan by the La République du Cameroun and the French government from the get-go was to take ownership of our land, to assimilate us, and that's where we are today. So in concluding this program, I want to thank Barrister Tim for joining us. I want to thank our viewers. I'm sorry you were not able to send any questions during this special The Horizon show. I want to also say that the video that we showed of Pago Jedinka appealing to the MPs and the senators and our people, telling them to go back home, is a cry that still exists today. Because think about it. If they all left and went back home, that would be a statement to the international community that enough is enough. These people are speaking as one. and the right given to them through Resolution 1608, that they have to be a people that have their own land, have their own boundaries that we mentioned, have their own anthem, have their own constitution. They deserve a right to live in freedom and pursue happiness. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for watching us. I want to thank you for being steadfast. I want to ask that you all join tomorrow when we draft for Manu, because in the long run, it's up to you, it's up to me, and no one else to make Ambazonian Southern Cameroons our land for our children and our great-grandchildren. Thank you so much. And this is the Horizon rounding up today, July 28th, 2023. God bless you.
You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV.